Take a look here. Kendrick Johnson. He was just 17 years old when he died this January. Was it a freak accident or something more sinister? Two different autopsies are giving two very different explanations here. The Georgia teen's body was found wrapped in a gym mat, and his parents refused to believe the initial autopsy that said his death was just a tragic accident. So they exhumed their son's body and had an independent autopsy conducted. CNN's Victor Blackwell joins me now with this exclusive results of their findings. Victor, you were there. You spoke to the parents. What's the latest? What did they found in regards to the second autopsy?
Well, I have this report from the doctor in Florida who found that Kendrick was not killed as a result of positional asphyxia, as the state said. This report finds, and again, this is something that's going to be argued about for some time, that he was beaten to death, that he died as a result of being hit. Specifically, he writes, unexplained, apparent, non-accidental blunt force trauma with injuries to the right neck and to the jaw as well.
Because I heard that his parents were waiting for him to come home that day from school, never came home. They were worried about their son, of course. They find out he was in this so-called accident in the gym, and his dad did a reenactment, if you will, and tried to do what they said happened to him, jump in the mat, because his feet were found in the air, and the dad said impossible.
Yeah, the story from the investigators is that there was a shoe, a gym shoe, at the center of this mat on the floor, and that Kendrick climbed up to the top, tried to get to the shoe, and then got stuck in the center. Well, the coroner's office, and this is a picture of Kendrick inside that mat, the coroner's office tells us that Kendrick's shoulders were 19 inches wide, but the hole at the center of this mat was only 14 inches wide, and even he cannot explain how the boy got stuck in such a small hole. He says that quite possibly he was in a diver's position with one arm extended. Now, the family asks a follow-up. All right, the mat is 6 feet tall. Our son is 5'10". If you extend his arm, that gives him conservatively an extra foot of height. How can he not be seen for 18 hours if you've got a boy who's 5'10" in a 6-foot mat with his arm extended?
And his face, if he's just in school and this is a freak accident, how do they explain the damages to his face?
And I think that picture of his face after he was found is what got a lot of attention online and a lot of attention through social media. It was swollen, and there were some skin slippage, very graphic details. But the doctors say that the reason this happened is because the blood rushed to his head and the process of decomposition sped up because he was upside down. The family says that they could look at his face and see that he'd been beaten. The initial report from the paramedics, not the report from the state of the autopsy or the county investigators, but the initial EMT says there was bruising to the right jaw. There was no report from the state or county after that that mentioned any significant injury or any foul play or any blunt force trauma. This is the only report up to this point that mentions blunt force trauma.
Victor Blackwell, great job on this. Thanks so much. We know the parents are not giving up. We want to continue to talk about this. Joining me now is former New York Police Detective Steve Cardian. And Steve, you looked at the evidence in this, as Victor was talking about, and we're talking about the marks on his face, like he was beaten in some sort of fight. What did you find? And I know you analyzed kind of the thickness of the mat, and that kind of plays in to if this could happen to someone or not.
Yeah, Susan, as the family reports, it's a gymnastic mat, not a wrestling mat as initially reported by other outlets. So that changes things. The gymnastic mat is very, very light, hard-pressed, hard to believe that he would be able to not only fit in there, but it's so light and unstable that it wouldn't have been knocked over. So it's really hard to buy. And with regard to the facial injuries, a lot happens to the body post-mortem, but there certainly appears to be evidence of some type of blunt trauma to the face.
Is it suspect to you that the autopsy was done so fast and it was ruled an accident and then kind of pushed to the side, and the parents had to come in and say, look, we want another autopsy done. We want to know what happened to our son. Is it odd to you how quickly it seemed to be solved?
Well, you know, sometimes law enforcement, sometimes the coroner's office, they make mistakes. They rush to judgment. So there's many variables that could have made this type of a decision and caused the family such unrest and seeking to have the body exhumed to find out the truth about really what happened.
Well, he died in January. If he was in fact killed, what are the chances that detectives will find out who did this? Will they just ask around the school and investigate, take the investigation kind of from the start and move from there?
Well, they have to take another look at it. They have to re-examine. Unfortunately, most schools and agencies, they don't keep that surveillance video for months on end. It's usually 30, 60, 90 days. But hopefully that they will find surveillance tape that may show something. They will find who he last try and find out who he last interacted with, and work backwards from there, checking phone records, checking online social networks, checking computer records as well.
And your heart always breaks for the parents of someone who loses a child. Quickly, what's next for this family legally?
Legally, they're going to still prompt the family's attorney, as the advocate for the family is going to prompt the district attorney's office and law enforcement to look at this further. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation, they're an amazing agency. They have very good resources. They have excellent police officers and investigators working for them. So it's to push law enforcement. I even read about a coroner's inquest possibly.
All right, Steve, appreciate that.